Hi there. Thank you for joining us today for this presentation. If you have any issues with your audio, go ahead and check that right now. I just wanted to direct you to the question box. If you have any questions during our conversation, feel free to add them there, and we have moderators available to answer those. Reach out anytime to support@banzai.org, and be sure to connect with us on social media platforms as well. Today, we're going to be discussing connecting with students in underserved communities. Just as a reminder, you can earn free professional development credit for attending today's webinar. We will be sending out an email shortly following this webinar to your registered email address. Go ahead and check that. Click on the survey link that's enclosed. After you submit the survey, you will be getting a certificate in your email that looks similar to the one that's displayed here today. If you have any issues with that, go ahead and reach out to support@banzai.org. My name is Natalie Hollingshead. I'm a curriculum writer here at Banzai, and we're joined today by Carolyn Dennis, who is the founder and executive director of NuJourney Foundation. A little bit about Caroline. Caroline, as I said, is the founder and executive director at NuJourney, which is a nonprofit organization focused on promoting financial literacy in underserved communities. We first connected with Caroline at the ACFE Annual Conference for Financial Educators in Louisville, Kentucky earlier this year, and we were blown away by her conference presentation there and knew we wanted to connect her with our wonderful community. So we're going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to Caroline, and we will follow her presentation with a question and answer time at the end.
Natalie, for the introduction and the invitation, and to the entire amazing Banzai team who I've had the pleasure to meet and work with a little bit over the last couple of months. As Natalie stated, my name is Caroline Dennis. I am the president, founder, and executive director for NuJourney Foundation, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that promotes, provides, and advocates for financial literacy and entrepreneurship in underserved communities. Just a quick tidbit about myself. I have been in the financial services industry for a very long time, longer than I care to say, honestly. And I have been able to sit in some amazing seats and have some great views and perspectives about finances, financial principles. And one of the things that was concerning to me is that there was a definite disparity in financial education across the kind of society board. Which prompted me to create NuJourney. And we have been like the little engine that could. We service small business owners as well as youth and adults in providing education and resources for financial education. So I'm super excited to get started. I always love talking about this topic, and you'll probably hear that throughout this presentation. I always like to start any presentation that I do with a welcome and a quote. And my quote today is going to be one step towards financial literacy gives you 2 steps towards personal empowerment. I think we can all agree that financial literacy is an empowerment tool. It is a aspect of our society that is starting to get a lot of buzz, a lot of people taking notice of just the disparity that is across the board. And so I first want to, before I even begin my presentation, give a shout out to all of you amazing financial educators. I celebrate your journeys, and I wish you the best in your journey, whatever avenue you're working in for financial literacy. So let's kind of get started. And I don't know if we can open up the chat. I don't know that I can even see it. But I would like to just ask the question of, why are you a financial educator? What speaks to you about financial education? And while you're putting that in the chat, I'll talk a little bit about my passion. It has actually become a passion and purpose project for me to teach financial education, because I understand not only is it an empowerment tool, but it actually creates generational wealth. And so for for legacy building, financial education becomes that important component. Natalie and Brandon, I don't know if anybody put anything in the chat that we can kind of see. Oh, let me just look and see if there's anybody that added anything. Not yet. Okay. Well, I'll let you ponder on that. And maybe while we go through this presentation, you will have a better kind of answer for me there. I want to start off with the little poll. I think Brandon has put a poll in the, is it in the chat, Brandon? It appears on your screen.
It is live now.
Perfect. So there's a little poll there. If you all could just indulge me for 30 seconds and complete the true or false poll. First question is, African American wealth is expected to hit zero in the next 30 years. Is that a true or false? Less than 25% of underserved communities are financially literate. Is that a true or false? And then less than 50% of underserved communities use banks as financial institutions. Is that a true or false? So I'm gonna give about a good 45 seconds for you to complete that for me, and we'll tally up the results and we'll come back and see what we have.
Caroline, while we're waiting for those poll results, I thought I would share a few responses to your question about what made you want to become a financial educator. We have Rose Wilson said, I had great financial mentors growing up and want to play that role for the youth of our community.
Love it.
Ellie Roman says to eliminate barriers. Julie Murad Caruso says, hi there, I'm here to teach generational wealth. And Shona Rawlings says, so many families in our community depending on public assistance to get through life. I want to help find a better way. Diane Maddox says, because I did not get financial literacy training and I know how hard I'm working now. So great responses.
Yeah, absolutely. I love those. Thank you all for sharing those. Each and every one of those responses are powerful. And they're powerful in your missions. And when we're talking about educating and we're talking about financial literacy, I always say finance is not a sexy topic, right? It's not the topic that everybody wants to talk about. It's not sexy unless you got a lot of money, to be honest with you, right? It's a hard topic when you are working paycheck to paycheck. It's a difficult topic when you don't have the knowledge or the resources. And so I love each and every one of your answers and love the fact that you can articulate that, because I think as we move through this presentation, that will be helpful in setting the foundation. So, Brandon, do we have poll results yet?
Okay, so for poll number 1, African American wealth is expected to hit zero in the next 30 years. We had 21% who answered as true and 79% who answered as false.
All right.
For question 2, less than 25% of underserved communities are financially literate. We had 90% answer true and 10% answer false. And then for question 3, less than 50% of underserved communities are use banks as financial institutions. We had 90% answer true and 72% answer as true and 28% as false.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. So let's kind of unpack those. So the first question that we had was, I don't know, Brandy, you could put that back on my screen so I can see those poll results, but thank you. So the first question was, African American wealth is expected to hit zero in the next 30 years. We had 79 people say false and 21% say true. That is actually a true statement. African American wealth is expected to be zero by the year 2053. So we have a little over a generation from now to get it right. And I remember when I first read the article, I actually was taken aback and I didn't believe it. And then I started seeing subsequent, and then I started doing research and was doing the United States Treasury and everything I could come up with. And it is a true statement. So how many people, I don't know if we can get a show of hands, how many people I think you were surprised by that, right? Because you answered false, but it's actually a true statement. The second is less than 25% of underserved communities are financially literate. And 90% of you said true and 10% said false. And those that said false would actually be correct, but it's still an abysmal number. It's 38%. 38% of US adults are financially literate. And that is concerning. That is not just an underserved community thing. That is just absolutely abysmal. And then when we talk about less than 50% of underserved communities use banks as financial institutions. 72% of you said true and 28% of you said false. That is actually a true statement. So give yourselves a hand on that one. So when we see those numbers and we talk about those, I'm sure that some of those are a little, for you, maybe a little shocking by the numbers. But what that does is it reinforces the fact that we have work to do. And as financial educators, and we're talking about specifically the communities that I serve, which are underserved communities, it is ever more pressing that we have to do more. And why do we have to do more? And how do we do more? And where do we do more? Right? So all of those questions come up, but we really start at the foundation of what is an underserved community. And I have identified 3 kind of characteristics for underserved communities: populations that share a common or particular characteristics, which include race, ethnicity, and or geography. And we'll break it down in that third bullet point. Communities that face socioeconomic barriers that affect or limit resources or opportunities. And then specific subsets of our population, i.e. Blacks, Hispanics, Latinos, Asians, Pacific Islanders, Indigenous, or Native Americans. If we look at just the credit score, it is eye-opening to figure out what by ethnic group, who has high credit scores and who does not. Asian Americans have the highest credit score in this country at 780 as an average. African Americans have the lowest at 622. Those disparities are huge. And again, tackling these statistics and these numbers are why I hope that we all are here today, but more importantly, why I am a journeyman on this mission to serve underserved communities. It all starts with perspective. So this probably is not going to work as well as I thought it was going to be, but I hope it serves the purpose. When you go to certain communities, you are used to seeing banks, right? And in other communities, you are used to seeing check cashing institutions. If I told you that more than 42% of underserved communities use check cashing places as their financial institutions, is that shocking? And the answer should be yes. And it's shocking because we know that while check cashing places have their place, and we live in a capitalistic society and we are grateful for the opportunity to do that, we know that essentially they are preying on underserved communities because they offer higher rates. They may offer services that work for the community, but the institution itself, you're charging people 30% to cash a check or to give them a payday loan. So there is no exposure that is a bank in underserved communities. So it's also about placement and exposure. I have NuJourney. We partner with the Boys and Girls Club here in my local area, and I've done 3 cohorts with them. And it is very shocking to know that if you ask a 13 to 17-year-old if they have a bank near them, they don't. And these are people who live in impoverished communities. These are people who look at check cashing or pawn cashing places as a place to do their finance. And so again, we have to expose people to something different in order for them to have the opportunity to do something different. The same is true for Dollar General. Dollar General, is it surprising to know that 70% of Dollar Generals are in underserved communities? That's a whopping number. that 70% of Dollar Generals are in underserved communities. However, Target are in less than 20% of underserved communities. They're within probably 10 to 15 miles and you can get there, but they're not in the community itself. And so if people have to go outside of the community, there's other infrastructure issues that, we can talk through as well, but those pose challenges as well. So the question is, how do we, Caroline, you've given us all this information, how do we connect with students? How do we connect with people to make sure that we are reaching them? When Natalie and Nicole and I met in Louisville, one of the things that we talked about, I did a little icebreaker with them. And it was probably the highlight of my presentation, I would say, because it was something so simple, but people really understood the impact of it. And essentially, you give people a blank sheet of paper and you say, listen to the instructions. And they listen to the instructions, but at the end of it, everybody holds up their piece of paper and their papers look different. And the reason they look different is because everybody's experience, their backgrounds are different. So when I did my speech in Louisville, I specifically said to the crowd that were there, the educators that were there, as educators, we know we want to get to the budgeting. We know we want to get to the savings. We know we want to get to the investing. We know we want to get to the student loans. We know we want to get to the actual meat of financial education. But you can't get there if you don't know the value of money for people. You have to meet people and teach financial education where people are. And that's so important. And so I've created this 3-step approach where I say, you got to define some value, you got to engage, and then you got to be a servant, right? Those are the 3 steps that I take when I am teaching financial literacy. Martin Luther King said, what are you doing for others? John F. Kennedy Jr. said, if not now, when? So when I create a NuJourney, those are the 2 questions that I run after. Those are the 2 questions that fuel my mission. What am I doing for others? And if not now, Caroline, when? We just talked about how African Americans in less than a generation from now will have $0 in wealth. Well, here's the backside of that. Hispanic Americans will reach that same measurement less than a decade after African Americans. Native Americans and the Asian Americans, Native Americans are in the crux of that, right? So they're in the median of that 23 to 30 year. So if we have all of these communities that are absolutely deficient in the knowledge to be able to provide for themselves, and the knowledge to be able to make financial decisions, to be able to get to that personal empowerment, then what are we doing? How are we engaging? So that's kind of the crux, that's kind of the foundation of what I want to talk about today. I don't know if we have any questions, but I want to make sure that I give people time to ask those. Do we have anything, Natalie, before I move forward?
Not right now.
Okay, perfect. All right. So when I talk about value, one of the things that I teach in connecting with my students or connecting with my entrepreneurs or connecting with, because the truth of the matter is there's a lack, let's just kind of be honest with ourselves. There's a lack of information. There's a lack of resources. And so in order for me to connect with anybody, I need to understand that what I'm teaching you is providing value. We have to define value. What is value to you? Money to African Americans are completely different than money to our white Americans, or are different than Hispanic Americans, and are different to women. So when we're talking about how we reach and connect with underserved communities, those are the groups we're talking about. So I want to make sure we include women in there as well, because women are 2 underserved communities when it comes to finance. I have been in the financial sector for, like I said, 20 years. And I will tell you, there are not a lot of women that sit in the seats. Now, there are more now than there used to be, But for there to be Fortune 500 companies and less than 20 of them have women at the helm, that's a problem. How do we overcome these things? And so we have to define values. And so in defining values, when we're talking about wealth, we have to talk about the background. We have to talk about points of references. We have to talk about experiences and external environment. I believe there was one participant that shared with us, she had financial mentors, and that's what has propelled her to be in this space. But we also heard from another one that said, I didn't have anybody. And because I didn't have anybody, I am struggling now, or it took me a while to get there. I arrived on my college campus and was met before I could really move into my dorm with credit card companies. They were lined outside of the dorm as an 18-year-old who was far away from home and said, hey, we'll give you this. Go ahead and take this. I tell the story of how my father gave me a credit card and he said to me, I want you to use it in emergency purposes only. Well, me defining emergency and him defining emergency was different. My definition of an emergency was, hey, it's homecoming. Or hey, since I'm in DC, we got a weekend trip up to Atlantic City, emergency. Different points of references. We don't talk about money in our homes as much as we used to, or as much as not used to, as much as we need to. And because of that, people have true psychological money trauma, right? Which is why it's still such a taboo topic to talk about. If I am not adverse in understanding money and talking about money in my home with my family and the people I feel most secure in, how am I going to go out into the world and talk to them about money as well? It doesn't happen. And so when we're talking about underserved communities, particularly, right, we go over to the other side of this slide, which talks about wealth, right? So a lot of people equate money with wealth. Money is currency. And what does the current do? It flows in and it flows out. Money is a resource for us to live a life that we would like to live. But we haven't taught that as a resource. We have taught it as a point of validation. If you have money, you are somebody. So people have psychological trauma. When we're talking about underserved communities, you have to know that that's where they start. In a lot of cases with psychological trauma. So when I'm talking to kids or I'm talking to entrepreneurs or women in these communities and we're building businesses or whatever we're doing, we start with, what does money mean to you? How do you think that money will make your life better? How do you think that money will impact you? And a lot of them say a lot of good things, but one thing that I have tried to really kind of eliminate from them is money is a mindset. Poverty is a mindset. I have done loans for a lot of people, wealthy people, NBA players, NFL players, make a lot of money, $50 million contracts, but they have a poverty mindset. And so they're bankrupt in 5 years after leaving the league. And we have teachers who make $50,000, $60,000 who can travel around the world because their mindset is different. So again, it's getting to the nature of what the value is, the perception, the impact, how money influences them, and what the potential that money can bring to them. Does it really bring you wealth? And defining what wealth is, defining what money is, defining out where your value starts is the key to any financial literacy component. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Is there any questions out there, Natalie? I don't want to, this is like my foundational step, and I like to spend a lot of time on value because it's so important.
No, it's great, but I love what you're saying. It definitely resonates.
Perfect, thank you. Value is that key piece. If you see over here, I put a little puzzle piece, right? You can have a lot of pieces to your puzzle, but until you stand on the foundation of what your value is with money, then you've already lost the battle. And as educators, that's where we have to start. And it's going to be different things to different people. People in the South, money is different than people who live in the Northwest, or people who live in the Midwest, or people who live out West, right? Money is different. There are people who live on a farm. My dad grew up with 17 brothers and sisters on a farm. His experience is different. I grew up in the city. Thank God. But again, values, right? My dad, he did teach us the value of money, but it didn't come easy to us, and he really prepared us, right? Everybody doesn't have that. And so you really have to categorize how I am going to, when I'm talking to underserved communities, when I'm engaging with, I have to make sure that I am starting my spots with value and looking at those 4 things under money and those 4 things under wealth. We'll move along. I kind of talked about this as well, but you asked these questions. These are some of the questions that I ask when I talk to my kids. Define value for me. What's the importance of money to you? What is the use of money, and what is money worth to you? Right? And a lot of times what you find is that people are so desperate for money because they're desperate for validation. I teach a class, it's called The Psychology of Money and the Power of Money. And we really sit down and we dissect what psychology of money is and how it affects the power of money. We can just look at our society and see what the power of money is, right? I don't care where it's end of the spectrum you are on, right? But we can see what that does. We can also see that money has a psychological avenue as well. And so I teach poverty mindset versus success mindset. And it has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with choices and the knowledge and the resources you have available. We'll move along. Oh, I'm going backwards. Sorry, guys. The second thing, identify the need. When you're going out to communities, and again, as educators, we already know what the script is, right? We already know what the outcome is. We know what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get you to build a budget. We're trying to get you to invest. We're trying to get you to understand the student loan process. We're trying to get you to understand financial tools and principles, right? We want to tell you what the impact of financial decisions are. But is that really their need? Or is that just what you're teaching? When we're talking about underserved communities, you have to understand, what is the need? What is the need of the community? Do I need to go in here and talk to these people about budgets when they're working paycheck to paycheck? Because guess what? They've already shut me down. Budget is not a nice word, right? People have a negative connotation when you talk about budget. We have to retrain people to say budget is actually not a bad word. You can actually budget your trip to Europe, right? Or you can actually include in your budget a new car. Budget is not a constraint. Budget is an empowerment tool. And it is redefining these things, right? So when we're identifying the need, do I want to talk to this particular group about needs versus wants before I even get to budget and savings? If people are living paycheck to paycheck, I can give you the information and savings. I can teach you the information. But am I fulfilling your need? That's the most important thing. Because when you fulfill the need, when you define the value, automatically you have now engaged your participants. My participant says, okay, Caroline, I want to take a trip to Europe and I can't do that. Okay, great. So your need is to travel. Perfect. Let's talk about how we get to that point. I don't start with, well, you need to get a budget because right now you can't do it. No, we said, okay, Europe is the goal. What's the foundational steps? And we put them in terms so that they're not so big. It can be put $10 away for the next 60 days every week. Planting that seed where they can see it grow. Now, you and I both know that $80 is not going to get you to Europe, right? There is no discount sale that is going to get you there. But what you do is you start building the building blocks for them to see, for them to engage, for them to say, oh, now I have value. Oh, this is growing. I can see where I'm going. And while my example might be a little cheesy, right? Hopefully you understand the point. You have to start saying the need of this community is X. If I'm talking to a group of divorced women, am I talking to them about budgeting, or do I start with let's get a success mindset? If I'm talking to a group of African Americans who live below the poverty line, am I talking to them about investing? Absolutely not. I'm talking to them about understanding financial principles and financial tools. I'm talking to them about a need versus a want. I'll tell you a funny story. So really quick, I teach these group of kids, and we do claim your life, and I had them claim their life. And I said, okay, this is what I need you to do. You're going to tell me what you want to be when you grow up. You're going to find your annual salary. You're going to tell me all the things you need, right? Shelter, clothing, or whatever. And I want you to build out your life. And so I had a little boy, he's 14 years old. He's like, I want a wife and I don't want her to work, and we want 5 kids. Oh, great. Okay, so build that out for me. Let me look how it sees. As we finished the assignment, right? It was a 3-week project. As we finished the project, he got up to do his presentation. He said, Miss Caroline, I can't afford a wife and I can't have any children. It looks like I'm gonna be living with my mom forever, right? He understood without talking to him about budget, savings, and everything. We just talked about the impact of financial decisions. So when we talk about these things, I just want to share with you that you got to start with the need, you got to start with the value. All right. I know I'm probably a little bit running behind, so I want to make sure that I get leave time for questions. Why are underserved communities unique? They're unique because they lack resources and knowledge. That's point blank. It doesn't have to be a complicated answer. It's just that. Underserved communities lack resources and knowledge. And because they lack the resources and knowledge, they lack the opportunity. And that's why we're all here. We're here because we want to serve, we want to be a resource, and we want to provide the knowledge. Simple as that. We stand on that foundation. Where are the opportunities? The opportunities are here. These numbers represent the financial literacy rates, right, of across the country. As you can see, the Midwest is at 58% financially literate, still less than Norway. Norway has the highest financial literacy rate at 72% of any country in the world. We're at 58% in the Midwest. We're at 41% in the Northeast. We're at 39% in the West, and we're at 32% in the South. So when you look at a map, and I'm not sure where everyone is from, but when you look and you say, where are my opportunities to be impactful? Where are my opportunities to engage the educational parts of it? There they are, right there. Wherever segment you are in, there is no spot in this country that does not need financial literacy. So if you can master, hey, let me define value, let me identify needs, and wherever you are, you will be successful, because we all need that. We need to truly be somewhere to stop the gaps. We need to be somewhere around 68% over the next 3 years to make sure that we can eradicate the first statistic that I talked about, which was African-American wealth and Hispanic Americans being financially stable or having any wealth in the next 20 years. The last part of my 3-step approach is filling in the gaps. You're going to have to commit with intention. I'm super grateful for Banzai. And the reason I am is because I had a conversation with Nicole and Natalie while we were at the conference. And the one thing we did, I actually was standing up and they were kind of manning the table. And we literally talked for, what would you say, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And we all figured out we're committed. We're committed to making this work. However we can, whatever role you play, we're committed. And when you're going into underserved communities that have a lot of trust issues, that have been traumatized, right? You have to show that you're committed, and you have to be intentional with your commitment. You have to educate with integrity. They can't listen to the sound bites of social media and decide, oh, this is how I'm going to work. Most of the time, people come very frustrated because they've listened to those 20-second sound bites where you have somebody saying, hey, all you have to do is this, and there you go, right? And then when they try to go do it, they become frustrated and disappointed. So they have to trust that you're educating them with integrity. And then my last is you got to invest in kind. And what that means is you got to sacrifice your time, you got to sacrifice your resources. You have to be dedicated in investing in these communities so that people see you, so that they don't feel like you're just in there to check a box, but that you actually care. And so when you connect with them, you feel a connection with people when you feel like you can trust them and they're loyal to you and your particular need. And if you can't feel that, then again, you've already lost the participants that you're trying to corral. So those are my three little things. The outcomes here. We want in underserved communities we want to build ecosystems, business ecosystems. We want people to be empowered personally. We want them to be able to live the life that they want to live. We want them to be able to say to themselves and pat themselves on the back and celebrate a win, no matter how small it is. We want them to take the journey and understand the value that financial literacy will give to them. And then my personal favorite is, it is the motto for NuJourney, is that we are on a mission to change the narrative from underserved communities to thriving communities. And we only do that with partnership, and we do that with power. And people equals partnerships equal power. So the fact that you're here today and you've partnered with Banzai and you've sat through me rattling on for the last 40 minutes, you've already started your commitment, right? You're there with the commitment part of it. So now together we build those partnerships and we build the power. And when you have power, you become unstoppable, really, right? And we want to be powerful for good. And so I think this is kind of really my takeaways here are, it's my other mottos that I kind of walk around with. I'm like a walking quote sometimes. Knowledge breeds opportunity and opportunities breed knowledge. It's the same component. If I can give you the knowledge, you can create the opportunities. Or if I give you the opportunity, you instinctively or intuitively will get the knowledge, right? Because you exposed to more. And the Chinese proverbs that says education breeds confidence and confidence breeds hope. Can't state that any better. So this is my presentation today. I hope that it did not bore you. I hope that it gave you a couple of nuggets and some takeaways. I don't know if we want to open it up for questions, comments, any aha moments today that people would like to share. I love to hear aha moments because it lets me know that at least the material that I'm presenting actually means something and is making a difference. So Natalie or Brandon, I don't know if you want to take it over.
Yeah, absolutely. Caroline, thank you so much. I, as always, love your insights, love what you have to say and share with our community. And we would love any questions in the question and answer box that's at the bottom of your screen, if you can see it. And while we're waiting for some of those to come in, you had mentioned in particular the Claim Your Life activity. And that sounds like something that teachers and educators really could implement into their classroom. And it sounds like it really resonated with students. Do you mind going into detail just a little more on that?
Yeah, sure. So what we do is we create this 8-week course, really, and we start with needs, having kids define needs and wants, right? Because when you're in an underserved community, you want to make sure that people understand. And I say kids, I love them because they teach me so much, right? So they tell me, hey, Caroline, a phone is a need, but an iPhone specifically is a need. I can't walk around with the Android. And I'm just thinking, listen, you got a phone, that's good, right? So with that, we build onto that. I don't correct them, right? Initially, I let them just have a go of it. And we talk about budgeting, we talk about savings, we go through this gamut. And by week 6, we allow them to say, what do you want to do in the world, right? What do you want to do when you grow up, per se? And we make them research it. We make them discover how much they make annually. We break it down on a monthly basis. And then we give them, this is how much your rent or your mortgage is going to be, whether they decide to own or rent, right? We make them looking up in their area of how much it would cost, right? We talk about a little bit about rates, but they don't understand it, in some aspects, but we'll give them the numbers. And then we let them build that out. And so then they have their income, and then they go through their expenses. They can travel if they want to, they can take family vacations or whatever. And at the end of it, they have to come in and present to us. And it is at their presentation that it now becomes a collective conversation, right? And then they grow from that. And most of the time, it's the funniest thing because they've already established what I would have already said, but I didn't have to break their heart. They learned it on their own. So.
Right. I love that. That's fabulous. We've got a lot of really great feedback on this presentation. One of the questions is, will the PowerPoint recording be available? And absolutely, we'll be sending out a recording to any registered participants, probably in a few days, just after we've edited it down. And that will be ready to go. Okay, I've got a question here from Ellie Roman. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. What do you see as some of the most common differences in money mentalities / psychologies?
I think the biggest thing is really the validation piece of it, right? That money will bring them validation. That money validates you in some way, and that is not just a underserved community thing. That is with women as well, because women are paid less than men. Just the fact. Because underserved communities are, a lot of them are below the poverty line, or that they're working paycheck to paycheck. They don't feel validated. And so they shut down mentally. And so that's why we start with the basis of what is a poverty mindset and what is a success mindset. And it has nothing to do with money. When we take money off the table, when we talk about just the financial decisions, that's when we have started to see the most growth and engagement in people, because now money no longer is the thing that they constantly hear. It is the financial decisions. Now they become aware of those. They're more tangible for them because now we've taken money off the table. So when they go to the grocery store, I coached one girl and she was spending money out all the time because she had kids. And we worked through that. And she said, now, Caroline, when I'm getting ready to pull in that Chick-fil-A or McDonald's for my kids, I say, I have something at home that I can cook for them. That's a win, because now we've changed the psychology of what you've decided was a need versus a want. So I hope that answers your question. I think it was Ellie.
Yes, Ellie's saying that you did. So that's great. And maybe the you did. Oh, she says thank you. I think the you did was maybe I did pronounce her name correctly. So
Oh,
that's
okay, perfect.
We also
Great.
have a question from Tamiko Brooks if there is a hard copy of this activity. And I think this is something that we would love to collaborate with you on, Caroline, to make some sort of a activity similar to that available to our teachers. So if that's something that you guys are interested in as educators, go ahead and shoot an email to support@banzai.org, and we can definitely put that, into our pipeline.
Absolutely.
A question here from an anonymous attendee says, I work with teens and I have to teach a short financial literacy workshop. I'm not the most financially literate myself and I'm very nervous. Any tips for how to best approach this?
Yes, get out of your head. That's the easiest thing, right? Get out of your head. When we're talking about teenagers, you have more knowledge than they do, right? So basically, stop worrying about the finance aspect and worry about the decision making, right? Because really, financial literacy is really more about attitudes, behaviors than it is about money, right? So when you go into teaching financial literacy, your confidence is that you have already experienced more than what they have. So you can just take from your experiences and let that be your compass and go from there. They will engage you and they will lead you to where they want to go. One of the great things about teaching teens are they're very inquisitive, because they're at the age where they think they're halfly grown, but they're not really grown, and they can direct a lot of the conversation. And there are times you can say, you know what, let's make an activity out of that, right? That pushes the pause button for you because you don't know what you want to do. Then you can go out and research it. And by the next time you're with them, and they're none the wiser. So just get out of your head. Don't make it so complicated.
Perfect. I love that. And I will also direct you to our Banzai Wellness Center. If you want to go ahead and just Google that in whatever search browser you use, we do have a lot of financial education resources that you can see even without a teacher account. We've got coaches, calculators, articles, and I encourage you to just play through those, check those out. I think you can get a lot of information that way, especially the coaches are sort of a choose your own adventure style game. And you can, input your own experiences, your own decisions, like Caroline said, and sort of see how those could play out in different ways. And, just having the desire to get started is a great place to start. Yes. Oh, thank you. Susan Waldron had commented that Banzai is great with the online activities and the booklet activities. We have another question for you, Caroline, from Henry Williams. He says, why do you think the South is at a lower status in financial literacy?
Because I think that so if I could just be very transparent, there was a very slow mentality in the South, right? That's where you had a lot of slavery settlements, right? That's where you have a lot of immigrants that come through. And they are not given, we don't open up schools and say, hey, let's teach financial literacy, right? So the truth of the matter is these are less progressive areas. They are more traditional areas. Now, let's be respectful because I live in the South, right? So, but we're more traditional in our thoughts. Things are passed down generation to generation. There are people who stay in the South their entire life and never move out to see that there's a world beyond them. So that's why you see a lot of opportunity in the South to become more financially literate. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, thank you, Caroline. A last question for you, unless there's any more from our participants. One question we were curious about is, how can a teacher tell if the lessons that they are giving are connecting with students from underserved communities? Like, what are some ways that we can sort of audit what we're doing and make sure we're approaching this in the right way to reach those communities? Because it sounds like just giving the standard, starting with the basics of you need, budget, what's your income and your expenses and whatnot, that's not really serving them well as a first step.
Yeah, I think honestly, again, it goes back to that value piece. And y'all probably want to hit me over the head because I keep saying value, but it really is the foundational component. When you find out what is important to people, it's almost like as a leader, I ask the question, what motivates you? I can't motivate you and I can't define your value. But if I can figure out what motivates you, I can inspire and aspire you to do others. So I think that the first step is you sit down and you become the blank slate, right? You don't come with any perceived notions of what you're wanting to teach. You have the information you want to teach. You let them lead you, right? And so if you say, how many of you, almost like a great activity I would give to anyone who is like, oh, I don't know where to go. Those pictures that I had in the beginning of a bank and a Dollar General, just flash those and say, tell me what you think of those. When you see a bank, what comes to mind? When you see Dollar General, what comes to mind? Right? When you see Target, what comes to mind? Or flash a name brand, Nike or Apple or whatever. Use that as your starting point, right? Because that's not going to take a lot of work on your part, and they're giving you the information you need to build out your financial literacy program.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Caroline. That's just great. And we really appreciate you joining us today and just sharing your knowledge with us, and look forward to continuing our collaborations. And for everyone that has joined, we wanted to let you know that we have a really fun event coming up in August. We are doing our first ever back to school boot camp. And this is a free virtual conference for educators to get you ready for the school year. We're going to have mini webinars that are around 30 minutes on all sorts of topics, including burnout prevention, Banzai for beginners, where we'll walk you through how to get started with our projects, our products and projects, tips and tricks from veteran financial literacy teachers, and then introduction to some of our new courses that are coming out this fall, including middle school budgeting, retirement, which we're calling Retirement, the Elephant in the Room, which is going to be really fun, and even more content. And of course, you can earn free PD credit for attending that event. So be looking in your email for that. And then just a reminder again that you are earning free professional development credit for attending this webinar. Check your email. If you're watching live, check your email following the event in the next few hours. We should have a link for you to our survey that you can complete, and it will auto send a certificate to the email address that you registered with. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at support@banzai.org. I'm putting up this screen for anyone who has joined and might not be connected with our products. If you scan this QR code, that will take you straight to a teacher account sign up. You can sign up completely for free and learn about all of our amazing resources that we have for schools. And last screen, oh, Caroline, I have your name spelled incorrectly here.
It's really okay.
There's one more N in that. Usually it's my last name that's wrong. So I feel that. But just one more time, I'm Natalie Hollingshead. I'm a curriculum writer here at Banzai. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or send me an email directly if you have an idea for a product you think we should develop. Caroline as well is under Caroline Dennis with 2 N's on LinkedIn, or you can find her foundation website is NuJourneyFoundation.org. Go ahead and follow us on all these social media platforms to hear more about upcoming webinars, giveaways, new products, all those sorts of things. And thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you.